All right. I think we are live. I want to welcome everybody who is tuning in right now for the other side of fear. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to come in. Could you just tell us who you are as you come in? Hey, Minister Vivian's on. Hey, Ashlyn, how are you? I see people as they are coming in. Tell us who you are. Tell us where you're watching from. Also, if you can do us a favor and share this broadcast, because there might be a lot of people who need to hear what is going on, especially in regards to this subject. We are on Facebook Live and YouTube. So those of you who have smart TVs, you can watch it on your TV in addition to on Facebook as well. If you don't know who I am, my name is Lesley Francisco McClendon, and I serve as the senior pastor at C3 here in Hampton, Virginia, because I do realize there may be some of you who are viewing from out of state. And I want to welcome you to our very first installment of what's called The Other Side of Fear. Now, we're calling it The Other Side of Fear because on Sundays we started a new series called Risk Takers. And I've often learned that where there is a risk, there is often a reward. And so that's why we're calling our midweek broadcast on Thursday nights at 7:30, The Other Side of Fear. The Other Side of Fear. And I've been asking myself that question for quite some time. What does it look like to live on the other side of fear? Is it possible to get there? What are some steps that we can take to get there? And so I have a very distinguished guest with me this evening. I'm going to let her talk about herself a little bit, but her name is Regine Henderson. And I've known her for a very, very long time. As a matter of fact, her parents still attend our church. Regine is in Georgia right now, but we're bringing her on the platform. Can y'all just welcome her? Just say, hey, Regine, thanks for coming up here. Good to see you. So how are you? Thank you for
I'm
being here with
good.
me.
Hey, y'all. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here. Hello, everyone. Welcome in. Yeah, I'm great. How are you doing?
Yes, I'm doing good. So this kind of came about. You and I were just really having an informal conversation via
Mhm.
text, and I think if I'm not mistaken, in May was actually Mental Health Awareness Month,
Mhm.
and I said, wow, this would be so good for us to talk about this because a lot of times I really think that one of the ways that we can overcome fear, if we're honest, is through counseling. And so we're going to be
Mhm.
talking about that a little bit. But before we get into it, can you just tell us? We see what your name is, but can you just give us a high level view? Tell us a little bit about who you are, where you graduated from, what you're passionate about, so that our viewers can know.
Yeah, definitely. So I moved down here to Atlanta in 2018, and I recently, in May, just graduated from my 2 years master's program at Georgia State University for clinical mental health counseling. Thank you. So now I have my master's degree, and I actually just passed my certification exam on Saturday. And so that's taken me one step closer to where I want to be, which is, of course, a fully licensed practicing counselor in the state of Georgia. So it's going to take a minute for me to get it together, but I'm getting all the steps checked off. So I'm glad to finally at least be done with the program so I can move into the workforce and start, healing some minds. And I'm super excited. You
Yeah.
said, what am I passionate about? I'm definitely passionate about, minority mental health,
Hmm.
specifically in the African American community, the Black community. And so, especially with everything going on right now, this is definitely work that needs to be done. And so I'm glad to be a tool, to help people get better and feel better and, all that
Yeah.
good
Well,
stuff. Yeah.
congratulations on all your accomplishments. I
Thank
think you have
you.
a Facebook page called Melanated and Misunderstood. Is that correct?
Yes, that's
Could you
correct.
tell me a little bit about where that name came from?
Yeah, well, that's it's interesting that you asked because if you would have asked me a couple of years ago, when I kind of first came up with the idea, it was more so for people of color, melanated individuals that may be feeling misunderstood because of, mental health issues or
Mhm.
just feeling like they're alone in the world and don't really have anybody to talk to about the things that they're going through. But recently, through some self-reflection, I realized that I am that, melanated person that often feels misunderstood. And so not
Wow.
only is my page for other people of color, but it's also for me as well. So a lot of the things that I post, and I also have a page on Instagram. So a lot of things that I post there and here on Facebook are kind of things that I'm going through. And so different affirmations that I post, I say them to myself. So it's very much so me kind of taking a bit of my own medicine and making sure that I'm doing okay, and also being kind of like a just being a service to other people as well through social media. That way I can reach a lot of different people all over the world
Yeah.
at one time. So yeah.
I'm finding out more and more, even as a leader, that authenticity is so key.
Yeah.
People aren't trying to follow just the whole perfect thing anymore. They want to know, like, hey, are you a human? Hey, do you
Mm,
bleed? Do you have
yep.
struggles and things like that? So that's good to hear you say that. Obviously, I know that you are very young, in
Hmm.
your 20s, but I have a question. I get this question sometimes. Has your age presented a challenge regarding counseling? Has someone ever been like, well, you're too young. What can you
Hmm.
tell me? How much have you lived? How are you going to help me? Have you ever come by any of that?
Actually, no, it was surprising to me because I saw clients in my internship phase of my program. And so a lot of people weren't, they didn't ask me my age. They didn't really ask me for my qualifications. Of course, I
Mm,
introduced myself as an intern because we have to let them know, like, we're not licensed yet and all that other stuff. But
hmm
a lot of people really, and most of the times when people come to counseling, it's because they need help. And so it doesn't really matter the age of the person. Sometimes it doesn't matter the race of the person. They just need that person to help them through whatever they're going through. So
Yeah.
all I had to do was show up and let people know, like, I do know what I'm talking about. I have, sat in the classes and done the work. And so I'm here to help you in the best way that I know how. And so if I present myself as this person, regardless of my age, that knows, okay, I can back up all the things that I'm saying with all this information, or I'm just creating this safe space for you where you can feel comfortable to open up to me, that the
hmm
age thing kind of drifts into the background. Like, it's not that they don't take it that big of a deal because I sound like I know what I'm talking about. I'm present with them.
Yeah.
I'm, just making them feel comfortable, making them feel safe. So,
I would agree with you right there. If you have solutions or answers to the problem that I may have, I don't care how old you are, help me overcome certain
mhm.
things. But let's get into it. People tuned in to learn about mental health. So I want to throw
Yeah.
this first question out. What exactly is mental health counseling for those of us who may not know?
Okay. Yeah. So mental health counseling is synonymous with therapy, in the simple fact that we're working with the mind. So
Okay.
anything that has to do with mental health, anything from stress to things that can be diagnosed or treated with medicine, like obsessive compulsive disorder or, severe depression. Like, these are all things that have to do with the mind. And so mental health counseling is when we sit with someone and we find out, okay, these are the issues that they're dealing with. We make references to different things that we may have, different information, and try to kind of pinpoint where these issues are coming from and
hmm
how we'll move forward, usually using what's called a treatment plan, how we'll move forward with helping the client. And this looks different, of course, with every individual. It looks different. There's no single way to help people. Like, you have to think about the environment that the person is from or living in currently, race, sex, gender, all those things play a role in how they experience the world and how they feel like the things around them are affecting their lives. And so
hmm
mental health it can be affected by a lot of different things. And so people may not know how to necessarily fix what's going on with them or how to get through what they're going through. And so um, having a counselor or having a mental health counselor, we know a lot about just the mind and how it works at the very base level, and
hmm
also like a lot of different specific things, and um, a lot of counselors have a lot of specifications in a lot of different areas, they vary. And so if you are going in for depression and you just want to work with someone who specializes in that, you can find that person, or you can
Yeah.
find a more general person. But it's basically just someone who counsels you on different things that are going on mentally. So you can have a career counselor, helps you find work and helps you kind of increase your career maturity when you're out there
hmm
trying to find jobs and things like that. Mental
Yeah,
health
I gotta
counselors.
stop you right there because I
Yeah.
like what you said. You said that it could be anything from stress or career opportunities. And I think automatically when we think of the word therapist or we think of
Mhm.
counseling, we automatically go to what many would deem the, big ticket items. We never
Right.
think, oh, I can just go to, like, just like I get a checkup for my well-being, I can go get a
Hmm.
checkup for my mind as well. And so when I think about that, uh, how in the world do we start to eliminate the stigma surrounding mental health, especially in the African American community?
Yeah, well, definitely the first step is to have that conversation. So basically, what we're doing right now, just
Yeah.
sitting and talking in an open and space with other people about, this is what mental health is, and trying to kind of break down some of the stereotypes or the myths that a lot of people might have surrounding mental health is very helpful too. So just having the conversation, one, and just being, I guess, like if you have friends that have things going on, just making yourself available to them. So letting them
Hmm.
know, like, hey, if there's anything you ever want to talk about, I'm here for you, or I have resources for other people that you can reach out to. But it does start with us, and we have to, having that conversation is the first step, because once you let people know, oh, it's okay to talk about the anxiety that I'm having, or it's okay
Yeah.
to be feeling these emotions, I'm not the only one. Like once you normalize that idea, like I'm not feeling well, I'm not doing well, then people will be more comfortable and more likely to kind of seek help outside. But since there's been years of, a bad rep for, mental health, or really any type of healthcare system for people of color, just because of like mistreatment and all this other stuff, it's very hard to convince, um, especially those in the Black community, that it's okay to speak to somebody about the problems that you're having, because you know that what happens in the house stays in the house mentality, or you can go to just
Yeah,
have someone
exactly. I was
pray
going
for
to
you
touch on
about
that.
it. Yeah, and so like prayer of course works, like I am living proof of that, but you also have to, there might have to be some other things added on, and that's where counseling comes in.
Hmm. I like that you
Yeah.
touched on that too. I know even me as a pastor,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes people may come for a certain thing, but I realize that there are certain things that I'm not necessarily degreed or licensed or even experienced enough to share with people. I
Mm-hmm.
believe that my job is to pray with you, to believe with you, to encourage you. But I think that if we could take that stigma away too if we empowered other people and say, hey, I'm not that qualified in this field. Here's someone else that I believe could help you with it. And then even going
Right.
far enough to say, hey, I see a counselor, personally.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for me, one of the big things for me as I continue in my tenure was I want to go to therapy for preventive measures, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
I think we always say, well, I'm going to go when this problem comes up, but can't you also go to therapy just to check in with somebody, just to kind of bounce ideas and help process some of the things that are going through your mind as well?
Definitely. And that's one of the things that we as counselors recommend to people, is not to wait until things build up or until things get really out of control or overwhelming for you. You can start going and establish that relationship when things are going well, just to have a listening ear for those things. And so that if something does pop up and you're not really sure how to deal with it, you'll already have that relationship set with your counselor, and you'll already have that person in place so that you can go to them and try to work it out with them. So definitely don't just feel like you can only go if you're stressing out or life is just happening really hard to you. Like you can definitely go if you're feeling okay. So
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Well, here's a question that you might get. Um, why do I need to go to someone who has a degree? So maybe
Mhm.
somebody will say, well, what's the difference between going to someone who's trained and someone who just gives good advice? Like my homeboy, my girl,
Mhm.
she's smart, she has the best encouragement, or he gives sound and practical wisdom. Why do I need
Mhm.
to go to somebody who has a degree or is licensed? What's the difference?
Well, of course, the license it shows you that this person has knowledge in a certain area. So instead
Mhm.
of just, I mean, you can read books and all that other stuff, but being a part of a 2 year like intensive program has taught me a lot more about the mind than I could have really ever learned on my own. And so that comes from experience as well. So like being in that internship phase of actually sitting with clients and seeing all these issues and dealing with them, it's just experience. It's that practice that you get that you definitely need when you're dealing with the mind, because you don't just want anybody just telling you things and you just
Mm.
going out, you know. And it also offers an unbiased opinion about what's going on, or an unbiased, like I can take a step back from the situation and see it from the outside in kind of thing. So yeah, it's
Okay.
good to go to friends and it's good to go to people who give good advice, but a lot of times you need someone who doesn't know you in any other instance except for that relationship, that counselor client relationship, because they can
Yeah.
see, a lot of times we can see the situation in another way that you may not be able to see. And
Hmm.
we won't necessarily tell you things that we think you want to hear. And I know a lot of times we have friends or family that do that because they don't want to hurt our feelings or they don't want to make us feel bad. But counselors, our job is to sit with you in whatever you're going through. And so not to baby you, not to kind of sugarcoat things, but just to kind of help you through it and show you like, these are the issues that you're dealing with, but it won't always be like this.
And so you're actually not even allowed to technically counsel your family members or those who are in your inner circle, right? Because you're biased, maybe.
Wow. Conflict of interest. Yeah.
Yeah. And for those of you who are watching too, thank you. I see we have a question that popped up here. It says, how do you interact with a mental person on medicines and who is having a rough time dealing with the situation or communication in that moment? So how do you interact with someone on medicine who is having a rough time dealing with the situation?
I would say the best thing to do would just gain some knowledge about what they're dealing with. So they can be on, you can be on medicine for really anything. And so every mental disorder is different in its own way. There are different symptoms. There are different just presenting things that you may see or you may not see. And so to know how to deal with someone who has a mental illness, you need to read up on that. You need to get some knowledge about that. And that means you can reach out to a counselor and ask them for information. There are a lot of different resources online that you can look at too. And so definitely just knowing a lot about the disorder or the mental illness would be the first step. But also know that every person is not the same in how they deal with it. So it might show up differently in me than it shows up in Lesley. And so it's like, you have to know, like, don't treat them like something's wrong with them, and don't treat them like, they can't be communicated with, because they're still human. They're just trying to figure out how to make things flow well for themselves. And so just be patient with them. But I would say definitely consult other professionals and do some research on your own to figure out, okay, how do I care? There are a lot of places out there that show you if your friend or family member has schizophrenia or is depressed, like these are ways that you can help them through that, or these are ways that you can communicate with them that won't necessarily make them feel worse.
And I think that's a way that we eliminate the stigma too. If we treat people like people, right? Like if someone takes medicine for the mind, it's no different than us taking medicine for other things that may be ailing us. And so I think if we could just normalize the fact that mental illness is really, how much different is it than any other illness? If we can just talk about it and normalize it a little bit more. And like you said, just treat people like people. They're still human at the end of the day. So here's another question, and thank y'all for engaging with us. If you have questions, you can go ahead and put it in the comments. But Norma Wells Green says, how do you help someone who needs help but is reluctant to seek help? That's a great question.
Yeah, that is a really good question. Definitely, like I said, just having that conversation. So start by sitting down with them and just asking them to talk to you about what's going on, offering that listening ear, and not necessarily listening to respond, or give advice, but listening and taking it in, and trying to empathize with that person, not show sympathy, but empathize. So get in the well with them and try to help them see their experience, try to see their experience through their eyes.
I like what you said there. So there's a difference between sympathy and empathy.
Oh yes, definitely. Absolutely. There's a really good video. I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically showing you that sympathy is if someone is needing help and you're like, oh, I feel so bad for them. I feel so sorry for them. I can't even imagine what they must be going through. And empathy is you talking to the person and saying, I could never understand what you're going through, but I'm here for you. I'm here to support you. Anything that you need, I'm here, So just being, like I said, getting in the well instead of just looking down like, oh, you're stuck in there, I have to try to get you some help, but going down into the well to help them, get through it and get through that process. So definitely meeting that person where they are, and just, it's really difficult with stigma and everything to convince somebody that it's okay to talk to a complete stranger about their problems. And I definitely know that. But once I was able to see that there are some things that I can't get through on my own, that I do need the support of other people, that was helpful for me. So maybe helping your friend see, hey, it's not working with just us two. Let's try to bring somebody else in that's, unbiased and from the outside, or just just trying to, I mean, the biggest thing to do is just make them feel comfortable with talking about what's going on. And just a lot of times too, you have to walk with people through the steps. And so finding a counselor can be a very tedious process, especially with, insurance, and just if you're trying to find a counselor of color, that can get really difficult as well. And so just be with that person, be like, hey, I'll go online with you. We'll look through these counselors together. We'll find them by whatever they specialize in. We'll find them by location. And then even taking that step of like, do you need me to call them and set up like a first appointment for you? Just helping that person and being next to that person and walking them through it. But also knowing that you can't help someone that does not want to be helped. And so unfortunately, there are a lot of people out there that we see that they need help, or we feel like they need help, and they're not convinced that they need it enough to take that step. And so you have to know that no matter how much you walk with them through the door, you can't go into the sessions with them. You can't make them go to future sessions. So you kind of have to definitely ask that person, okay, what do you want to do? Like, keep them involved in the process. And that's what happens with the counselor-client relationship as well, is we make sure that we involve the clients in every process of what we do, the treatment planning, the paperwork, just everything, so that they know that they are also having a hand in achieving the goals that they have, that it's not just us doing the work.
Speaking of a counselor, is it important to have a counselor that shares your race and gender identity?
Not necessarily. And I was surprised by that too. But a lot of people find comfort in people that don't necessarily look like them, which I found interesting. But for me personally, I wanted a Black female counselor, and added on to that, I wanted a Christian counselor as well, because although I don't want my sessions to be, maybe not all about that, I do want to be able to, bring up God in session, and that counselor to be like, yeah, or to take that and kind of move along with that. And so to me, it was important to have someone who shared my belief, my religious beliefs, and also could identify with me on the basis of just being a Black woman in America today. So I needed to see someone that looks like me. I needed that representation sitting across from me. And I don't know if that's because I am a counselor in training. And so just seeing someone who looked like me doing what I want to be doing, what I will be doing, kind of was empowering for me. But that's what counseling is supposed to be doing anyway. We're supposed to be empowering the client to feel better, to do better for themselves. And so that's what did it for me. But I've heard people say that they don't really care who their counselor is. They don't care about the gender. So it really just depends on the person. I can't honestly say that it's better or worse to have someone that looks like you. Yeah, it's a preference thing.
Well, with that being said, are there any pros and cons of having a Christian counselor? Like, should you or should you not?
That's another preference thing too, because it depends. It depends. And I say that because for me, when I initially went in with my counselor, she asked me how much I wanted my sessions to be about, religion and about Christianity. And so if you can find a Christian counselor that is willing to sit with you and ask you, okay, how much do you want? Do you want me to bring it up, or do you want me to wait for you to bring it up? Things like that. Because some counselors all they do is reference back to the Bible, or talk about, God this, God that, which is not bad. But it might not be for everyone. And so you would just have to find the counselor that best fits you. So I think that would be a con if you find a Christian counselor that, even if they don't share your beliefs on a lot of things, because, with Christianity, there are some people that are more old school and some people that are a little more, open-minded to things. They may not agree with your lifestyle, but they will still sit with you and talk with you. And that's, that's what counseling should be anyway. We don't have to necessarily agree with everything that our client is doing, but we need to show up for them just on the basis of being another human being and seeing that someone is in pain and needs help. And so I think a pro of that would just be having, like, if I were to bring up God in a session and having someone who also believes in the same thing that I believe in to kind of affirm me in my statement, or to bring up maybe a Bible verse that I couldn't remember. And now that I know it, I can read it. And that kind of helps soothe me through stress, or just different things. There are definitely more pros than cons when it comes to seeking, a Christian counselor or any type of, religiously affiliated counselor.
So I think me and Sherrod would agree on this. is there like a try before you buy type of program, or how do you know a counselor is or is not a good fit for you? Like, what's a good litmus test?
Well, unfortunately, there's not really a try before you buy per se. You can always, most counselors have what's called a quick phone consultation. And so you can talk to them on the phone for a few minutes just to find out what do they specialize in, kind of get a feel. You tell them what it is that you're trying to come in for, and they let you know whether or not they'd be a good fit for you. But it's really trial and error, honestly.
Hmm.
Having to, because you'll never know if you'll like a counselor or not until you're sitting in their office. And you
Okay.
have to kind of feel it out. You have to see, okay, when I enter the office, do I feel a lot of tension? Do they talk a lot about themselves and not that much about what's going on with me? Are they
Hmm.
cutting me off? Does it look like they're listening, or are they checking the clock every 5 minutes? Like, there are a lot of things that the first few sessions clients are doing that us as counselors have to make sure that we are, paying attention, being attentive, because for African Americans specifically, we are like the highest race that drops out of counseling really early,
Hmm.
because you need to establish that trust really early on with us, or
Oh, okay.
we'll just leave, because there's already that stigma there. So I'm not going to go and sit in and talk to some stranger about my business and then you're not even paying attention to what I'm saying. Like, that's,
True.
you feel that. You can definitely feel it out. And so I would say, as far as a litmus test goes, it's just being in that room with that person. You might have to try it out, but I would say give it a couple of sessions, 2 or 3 sessions at least, because the first one is really just paperwork. You're not really getting into anything.
Well, when you say give it a couple of sessions, I know I'm
Mhm.
not the only one, but in the back of my mind, I just see dollar signs. Like,
Oof, yeah,
what
yeah.
if I have limited funds or no funds? Can I still get counseling?
That's the $1 million question right now, and that's definitely why a lot of people of color are not getting the services that they need, especially those in more underserved populations, because they may not have insurance, they may not
Yeah.
have access to, like, if you're trying to do virtual, like a lot of people are doing virtual sessions right now. If you don't have access to a computer or internet, you can't get those services. Or if you don't have
Mm.
transportation to the office or to the agency to get those mental health services, you can't get that. So at the basis of just seeing, okay, who actually has access to this? Okay. But then when you're thinking about, like you said, the dollar signs, the costs, it's not cheap at all. And really, but there is hope, because there are a lot of counselors nowadays that do what's called a sliding scale. And
Okay.
so you can talk to them specifically about your income and things that you have going on, and they will negotiate with you, and they'll be like, okay, you can pay this for the next couple of months. And then when you're able to get a job, or when you're able to, do whatever you need to do, we can talk about a different price. But like for me, I was able to get a student rate as a student. And so they have that. Some counselors have that available. But there's definitely a sliding scale. There are a few foundations that offer vouchers. So you can apply for those. But yeah, unfortunately, it's difficult to kind of try things out when you're not
Yeah.
really, you don't have the funds and stuff. And that's what's unfortunate about the whole mental health care system, is the cost of it, and the people that need it the most aren't able to get access to it. So
Yeah, and I know you mentioned virtual. I mean, given COVID-19 and everything that's going on, is virtual counseling even a thing? Like, is it valid? Does it still get the same results?
yeah, definitely. Virtual counseling, like I said, I have a counselor, and we've been doing that for the past couple of months since COVID. And it's definitely valid, as long as the counselor is licensed. It's legitimate. And so, but the biggest thing with virtual counseling is you can have connection issues. So, like, there might be a
Mm.
lag in you talking and what they're seeing, and so the counselor might not pick up on different nonverbals, which a lot of times tell a lot more than the client might be saying out of their mouths. And so, not being able to pick up on nonverbals, or just anything, from a lot of clients or potential clients are nervous about confidentiality, because it's the internet, and
Yeah.
it's the internet. So of course, we can do everything we need to do. We can take the steps. There are a lot of things that we have to do on our end to make sure that things are encrypted and things are kept safe and secure and confidential. But it's understandable why people would be nervous about that. But there's definitely
Hmm.
nothing wrong with virtual counseling. It's convenient if you don't necessarily have transportation to get to and from sessions, or if you just, if there's a reason why you can't get out of the house or you can't go somewhere, like the virtual sessions are very convenient for that. But
Okay.
it's definitely valid.
Well, I have another question here. And I think, especially even given the climate of our nation right now and
Hmm.
everything that's going on, people are experiencing a lot of trauma.
Hmm.
Stress is at an all-time high. And so someone says right here, can you recommend any practices one can do on their own time to stay present and also relieve signs of stress? Are there
Mm.
any best practices we can do?
Definitely prayer and meditation. Both of those work really well, and they can work together. You can meditate for a few minutes, pray for a few minutes. Self-care. I'm really big on self-care. I love self-care. And that's anything from, taking a walk outside, taking a nice hot bath, drinking hot tea, burning candles. Just, it's really anything that you can do outwardly that would make you feel better or boost your mood or relieve stress. Journaling can be helpful for some people too, if you're consistent with
Mm,
it, if you're able to be consistent with it. And of course, just staying connected with people who care for you and vice versa. Just having that, especially times like this when we're forced to be socially distant or we can't really hang out with people like we would want to, that can really affect you mentally. And so knowing that you have people in your corner that you can call whenever you need to talk, or being that person for someone else to help relieve their stress, is helpful too. So there are definitely a lot of different things that you can do, a lot of healthy ways to kind of cope with stress.
So would you also say that's the same steps we should take to begin the healing process for those of us who may have gone through some sort of trauma or whatever, and we're just like, how do I go on my path on my journey to healing? I want to get
Yeah.
better. Would you say the same?
Well, those are definitely things that you can do, but I would say the first step to any type of healing is self-reflection. So sit with yourself, you can journal these things out, but just think about, okay, what are the things that I'm struggling with right now? What areas of my life do I want to change? Where do I want to improve? And just being able to identify, like, these are the areas that I need help, and then taking those areas to a counselor and explaining to them, like, these are my goals for counseling. This is what I need help with. So definitely the first step I would say is to sit, take a second, sit with yourself and
Hmm.
figure out what's really going on. And just be honest about it. I think a lot of times, especially in the Black community, we don't want to seem weak, or we don't want to seem, like we can't handle all the things that are being thrown at us, even when we can't. And so we won't even recognize it for ourselves that we're going through the pain that we're going through. And so we'll
Mm,
try to repress different feelings that we're having or emotions. And it's like, no, the first step to you healing and getting through this and being on the other side is to acknowledge, like, these are the issues that I'm having. I am crying for no reason, knowing that, okay, there is a reason. I just don't know what that reason is. Or I am
okay.
stressing out about this, this, and this. Or I am feeling depressed, but I don't know if I can tell anybody because they're going to say that that's not, that's not a thing. Or, just being able to identify, like, I'm anxious all the time. Why am I anxious? Just being able to
Hmm.
put a name to it and then take that and move on with it, I'd say is the first step, definitely, to healing.
So let's say we did decide to take you up on your offer and go get a therapist for ourselves.
Hmm.
What can we expect when we show up?
A lot of paperwork usually in the first session, just to get background information, just a lot of just dotting I's and crossing T's, basically. The first session is usually kind of short, maybe like 30 minutes, and it's just, a lot of people call it a screening. So it's basically you
Okay.
sitting with the counselor and they're like, okay, what brings you in? And you just tell them what issues you're dealing with, and then they'll ask you what your goals for counseling are.
Hmm.
And then you'll just talk about, okay, how often would you like to come in? And then counselors usually tell you a bit about themselves too at the beginning, just to kind of introduce themselves and establish that relationship. But it won't be anything like, okay, I'm spilling my guts to you, I'm telling you every secret I've ever had. Like, that definitely won't happen in that first session. And so you will still have time to kind of feel out the counselor before you start telling them, the deep things, if you don't really want to open up right
Hmm.
away. But a lot of times you can just feel that the counselor, okay, this person's right for me, or I at least feel safe in this setting. So I may not necessarily stick with this counselor, but they
Right.
seem trustworthy. They seem like someone I can talk to about this. And so you can open up if you feel comfortable.
Here's another question. Can you talk about the definition of an experience of anxiety? What is anxiety? What does that look like? How does it manifest for
Mhm.
people who might not understand it?
Okay. Well, there's generalized anxiety, which is, of course, more general. And then you have social anxiety. There are a lot of different anxieties. But basically, anxiety at its core is just, that nervousness, that feeling of, I don't want to use the word in the definition, but that feeling of um, anything can happen at any
Mm,
moment. And I'm in my mind, I'm going through all the different possible scenarios, most of which are irrational, but to me, they're rational. So I'm thinking about it constantly, constantly, constantly. And it keeps me from going outside. It keeps me from going to public events. It keeps me from making friendships and relationships because in my mind, oh, they're looking at me, so they must be talking about me. Or
mhm,
I can't drive because I might get in an accident. And a lot of times,
mm,
rational thoughts are based off of situations that have happened. So you might have been driving one day and got into an accident, and that kind of kickstarted the anxiety. And so you're thinking, every day I get behind the wheel of a car, I will get into an accident. And so you
mhm.
start to obsess over this idea, and that turns into a lot of different things. So anxiety can kind of turn into, different things, but at the base of it, it's just this like nervousness and this sense of this lack of control too, this feeling like I can't control anything that's going on around me. And so just being afraid of that and feeling like any move that I make or any step that I take can get me into a situation that I don't want to be in. And so to avoid that, I just avoid the situations altogether. I just don't make
Mm,
relationships with people because they may not like me and I might lose them down the line. Or I don't go for this job because I might not get it, or I might get it, but 3 years
wow.
later I might get fired. So like a lot of different things that it could show up as. But basically, it's just that being nervous and feeling like everything that is happening to you and around you, and you have no control over any of it. It's a very
Wow.
overwhelming feeling.
Yeah, that's good. So we have to wrap up soon, but given that this is called the other side of fear, um, I want to ask you, you've gone to therapy, you've gone to counseling. What
Hmm.
breakthroughs have you gotten? Like, would you say that it's beneficial? I mean, just kind of talk to us a little bit as someone who's experienced that. Just
Hmm.
kind of give us a high level view of how you kind of are living on the other side of fear just by going. I mean, you really kind of tore down that stigma. It was like, I don't
Hmm.
care if people have something to say about me. I'm going to get my mind right. I'm getting it checked up
Yeah.
on. But here's the result of that happening.
Yeah, well, definitely for me, I'm the type of person that used to try to solve all of my problems myself. And so
Mm,
I eventually got to a problem that I could not solve by myself. And of course, I prayed about it and everything, but I needed someone to talk to. I needed someone that wasn't my friend, that wasn't going to tell me what I
right.
wanted to hear, that could see it from a wider lens to sit with and talk to them about it. And just have that space to cry and to um, also learned some things about myself. And
Mm,
so I learned that a lot of the issues that I was having I was creating them for myself. So I was either
mm,
overthinking about things or having that anxiety and not wanting to fail and that fear of failure controlling every move that I made. And so like you said, I had to take that step and just realize I don't want to keep living like this. If I want to be successful, if I want to make change in other people's lives, I have to make sure that I'm well myself. I have to make sure that I'm doing my part to keep myself healthy holistically. And
yeah.
so I found out a lot of things about myself, a lot of things about a lot of the questions that I had of like, why is this happening? And realizing like, oh, there are things in my past that have affected the way that I view the world. And so I might be, displacing anger onto somebody that it doesn't belong because
Mm,
I'm really angry at this other person years ago that did this thing to me. Or I don't know how to put my emotions into words. And so I just don't say anything. I just shut down.
mm,
But then I realized through counseling, no, if you get it out, if you can journal it, you don't even have to say it to anyone. If you can get it out on a piece of paper, you'll feel a lot better because that weight is lifted. And that whole idea of all these things are going on in my head, I can't get them out of my head. If you put them onto paper, it helps you. And so I just kind of had to take a step back and just view my life and and basically convince myself that if I wanted better for myself, if I wanted to do all the things that I wanted to do, I couldn't keep going the way that I was going. I needed to sit with, like I said earlier, sit with some of the things I was dealing with and just like, okay, Regine, you need to deal with this stuff. Like you're getting older now. You're going to be out on your own. You need to start, taking charge of your own life, basically taking charge of your mental health and making sure that you are where you need to be so that you can show up for other people.
Yeah, that's good. Wow. Anybody have any commentary on that? I mean, I think that this has just been such a fruitful discussion. Can y'all let us know? Just send some encouragement our way. Let Regine know that we are thankful, that we're appreciative of her time. Did y'all learn anything tonight? Was this helpful? Do you like these interviews and panel discussions? I know that I do. It was very freeing for me just to hear, another perspective. I think that you were very balanced and that you answered things really, really well. And so I'm just thankful that you took time out of your schedule. I know you could be, even though COVID, you could be doing whatever you want to, but you came out and hung with C3.
Yeah, I love C3. See, this is my home church, y'all. I'm always gonna come back home to C3. So
we will always claim you.
Yes.
But we're grateful for having you up here. I think that this was great, and I am looking forward to just exploring this topic even more and just getting help to as many people as possible. And I think hopefully our conversation today kind of took the stigma away. Help people understand that counseling is a thing, not a thing of the past, it's a thing of the present, and it should serve you in the future. So when you talk to me, even 20 years from now, I want to be able to say, hey, I'm still in therapy, right?
Yes. But the goal of therapy is that you will no longer need therapy. So we try to make it so that you are able to solve your own issues after, we've ended our relationship. And so we don't want this to be long term. We want people to come in, get the help that they need, and so that we can, send them on their way and they can start making their own changes in their lives and not need us to kind of help them through it. So I hope in 20 years you won't be sitting in somebody's chair. Yeah.
Maybe I'll be in the chair. I'll go from going to therapy to being another level of a coach. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not going back.
Got 2 doctorates out here.
Yeah, I'll leave that to you. You leave your business card and we will refer people to your practice. So the best is yet to come. And I see a lot of comments up here, very informative. Thank you. Great job. Good information. I'm going to find a counselor. This was great information and encouragement to address mental health. So proud of you and how you handled each question. Continue to soar. A lot of thank yous, a lot of proud of yous. So glad to see this conversation. Come on, let's make her cry over the air.
No.
But yeah. So I guess the best thing to do, if you want to close out in prayer or I can do it, it's either way. It doesn't matter what you want to do.
You can do it. You go ahead and do it.
Okay, I'll do it. Okay. Well, Lord, I thank you so much for this day. I thank you for another opportunity to be here, to be alive. I thank you for affording us this opportunity to just have great dialogue and discussion. And I pray that something that was said just really ministered to people, that touched hearts, that just began even the renewal process of our minds. I thank you, God, that you are removing the stigma away from us going to get the help that we need. I thank you, God, that you have even placed in the earth trained counselors and therapists that can help us to be the people that you have called us to be. God, I pray for every person who is watching this, every person who will watch this on the replay. God, I just pray that you would just bless them, that you would comfort them, that you would keep them, that if there is any anxiety or stress or a heavy cloud or darkness that is upon them, God, that your light would shine in and through them. I pray even as we are about to go home and do other things or go to bed, that you would just give us the sweetest sleep of our lives. God, we give you glory, we give you praise. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. Yes.
All right.
Follow me on Instagram and Facebook, Melanated and Misunderstood. Yes.
Let's type that. I'm going to type it.
Can you type it? Yes, Melanated, MELANATED, and Misunderstood. Yes.
I'm glad that you put that in there, because I typed in melanated and the little red squiggly line came up, but I'm pretty sure I spelled it correctly.
Yeah. Yep. Perfect.
You made your own name. But I love that so much.
Thank
We
you.
need it right now. I agree with you. I agree with you. A lot of amens, which means it
Take
is
care of
so.
yourself. Take care of yourself, y'all.
So
Get
y'all
some
make sure
rest.
that you follow Regine, get some rest. If you found this to be beneficial, it would not hurt if you would share it again to your page or text a link to somebody else. We're going to keep it up so that people can watch the replay because we want to make sure that people have access to solid and helpful information.
Yes.
So if we don't see you Sunday, we'll see you again next Thursday night at 7:30 p.m. I'm going to be
Bye, y'all.
interviewing Bishop. It's going to be fun.
Ooh, yes.
So y'all tune in. We're going to
Missed
get
that
to
one.
know a little bit more of his story. Some people are saying they liked your page. Good, good,
Oh, thank
good.
you. Yes.
So we're going to spread the word about Miss
Yay.
Melanated and Misunderstood. So thanks again for tuning in, and
Thank
we will talk
you.
to you soon. Night, everybody. Love y'all so much. See you soon. Bye bye.